So when do you stop counting months?
Well, my wife counts. So whatever she uses, that's what I go with.
You go with your wife?
Months, days, weeks, years. That's what we're going with.
Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. So I wanted to bring in a guest, Michael, who happens to be in the meetup group locally here. Is had some things we were talking about during the group, and I thought it's really interesting. So Michael, what was the topic that you had brought up? You were talking about your child. First of all, how old is your child?
13 months.
13 months. Okay. So you were talking about the tantrums are just starting, like you're just learning about what a tantrum is. What exactly happens in a tantrum? Like, so, what actually goes down?
So I have a 13-month son, and he'll be playing with something, and all of a sudden, he just starts crying.
Like
or throws
reason
it,
at all.
Or like
throws something. Yeah, if you give him something, throws it. You're trying to eat. If he's trying to eat something, he won't eat it.
And so, what do you guys do when something like that happens? Do you just stand back? Just let it happen?
Freak out?
What do you do?
So I usually try to grab him and spin him around, or I try to distract him with something.
Like playing with him.
Yeah.
And does it work?
It usually does. Like sometimes if we're in his room, I'll grab him and I'll just run down the hall really quickly and like go to a different room, or we'll go, spin around in circles, or I'll just start pointing out.
So the
things.
distraction method is sort of your go-to move.
So wait a minute, there's methods?
Oh, well, distraction is one, especially early on, that you learn does work.
Okay.
Because, whatever it is, the child might be fixated on something.
Sure.
But they're...
Sounds like a martial art. Like you're actually, doing like
you're a
kid
little ninja.
food or something. Yeah, exactly. Distraction method.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely something that's valuable. The question is like, can you even figure out what the child wants when that's happening?
So that's a good question. Actually, my wife and I, we just started teaching him sign language.
Oh, cool.
So now he can start pointing to things, and he can use his hands to actually try to communicate what the issue is. And that's been pretty cool too.
Oh, right. Yeah, see, I would not consider myself an expert in that area, but they do say that part of their frustration early on as babies and such is that inability to communicate. They're trying to communicate something, or they're frustrated. They're sort of learning about the world, and then all of a sudden, something doesn't go their way, and they don't know how to communicate it. And so crying or throwing something or whatever is sort of the way that's done. So sign language, we did sign language with our first child, and it was great.
Like you mentioned, the methods, there's, ignoring him. That's another method, but I haven't found that method to be something that I like to do.
Okay.
Is it because you don't get a reaction out of it, or is it because that it just doesn't work, or what's the reason why you don't like that method?
I probably don't like that method because I don't want to see him sitting there crying. Mm-hmm. I want to help him in some way.
Yeah.
And by distracting him, I feel like I'm helping him get his mind off of what he's fixated on. Mm-hmm. So running down the hallway, spinning him in circles, pointing out the ceiling fans in the room, or handing him a new toy, he's able to get his mind off of what he was fixated on.
Gotcha. And now
Jedi mind trick.
Exactly. These aren't the droids you're looking for. It's the toy you're looking for. So basically, I don't know, do you think at some point you'll start to figure out that, I guess as they develop language, you'll get that, but between that time.
It's hard. It's hard. It's
well,
really
yeah.
hard.
Where do you know when?
You think, oh, he's hungry. He must be hungry.
Yeah. You start shoving food down his throat.
Yeah. I mean, you just.
The go-tos.
You're
right?
sort of learning.
You don't realize he has emotions.
Yeah. You're really just learning it as you go.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't know if this is true for everybody, and I'm sure it's not, but men don't typically do things as much by emotion. We sort of more, in general, more on the sort of cerebral side.
Sure.
So it's like, oh, he must be hungry. He
right.
whatever. Versus,
if X, then Y.
Versus I think women have a little bit more tendency from the emotional side to sort of, so it means they may hug them or kiss them or whatever. We want to like solve the problem, you know?
Right.
Oh, he's got a problem, we need to solve it, you know, versus just maybe he just wants to be held, you know? So I think, you know, part of it's just learning. It's just learning that process, and you learn what works for you and, you know, your child. It's
Sure,
there is
sure.
no perfect way.
Right. That's really interesting.
So Michael, we're here with Michael, who's also a member of the local meetup here in Encinitas. And one of the other things that, Michael, if you're okay with sharing, was you had talked about sort of the traumatic process of childbirth, you know, sort of that what you guys had to go through, which was pretty unique. I mean, maybe you can, if you feel comfortable sort of sharing that. I know that, you know, there's a lot of people that go through sort of tough childbirth, you know, whether it's the wife goes through something tough, or you as an emotional goes through tough, or even the baby physically goes through something tough. So what happened in your situation? You had sort of touched on that.
Yeah. So initially, you know, we were planning a typical childbirth. We scoped out the hospital. We bought all the equipment needed to load the car up, go to the hospital. And my wife and we left on a Sunday and went to the hospital. Sorry.
Oh, good.
That's right.
No, it's hard to do because you don't have a mic like directly in front
We
of
can
you.
edit.
Yeah, well, yeah, don't worry about it.
So my wife and I, we, you know, went to the hospital on a Sunday, and we were given a private room, and we started the whole process. Yeah.
Jeez.
Started the whole process. We had our music. We had, you know, different massagers and things like that. We had a game plan and started down that process. And then throughout the day, things just started to get to a point where, I don't know.
But what's the word for it?
Well, you said
You said you went through a trauma, so
Well,
basically something happened that was unusual for even. I mean, childbirth is probably a big trauma. Kids coming through an
You had
orifice.
said you were telling me earlier, like you said, you know, you had this great plan or these expectations, and all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people in your room. You know, like you're going through childbirth, and all of a sudden, a bunch of people show up. Like, what was that about?
So we had been at the hospital for a while, and we had a couple different doctors come by, and all of a sudden, we had to leave that room and go into the operating room. And
This is before the child is born?
Yeah, this is before the child was born. And we're in the operating room because my wife had to do an emergency C-section. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting behind a curtain. There's, you know, maybe a handful of people in the room.
Do you have a video recorder? You have a camera?
I had my camera. We bought a camera for Christmas. So, you know, get those first snapshots.
Yeah.
And I was very excited to meet my son.
Yeah.
It's already paparazzi for little kids already.
Exactly.
We hired 10 cameramen.
And then, so the doctor that's delivering my son is telling me, hey, get ready with your camera. Get ready. He's about to come out. She pulls him out. And then all of a sudden, my wife starts, you know, saying, what's going on? What's wrong? And I didn't think anything of it, but he wasn't crying. At that moment, and then it hit me. They took my son, they brought him to the corner of the operating room, and they called a code blue. And next thing I knew, there was like 30 other people in the operating room. I'm still stuck behind this curtain. My son's
Like, what the heck is going on?
Jeez.
Yeah.
My son's in the corner with like tons of people around him. I can't see him. My wife's behind a curtain. I can't really, you know, do anything to help her. And she just had a C-section.
Right.
So I'm just kind of helpless here.
Yeah. So
You're like, get up, go help him. So what exactly was the problem? I mean, what did you find out what was wrong? I mean,
So he had meconium aspiration, which sounds all cool, but basically he breathed in poop.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That happens?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
geez.
apparently it's
Be prepared for
common
this.
for kids to swallow poop when they're born, but not breathe in poop. So that's what he did.
These are things that people do not tell you when they think about having
You're
childbirth.
gonna tell him at his 18th birthday when he
Yeah.
thinks
Hey.
it's really cool. Say, hey, you're
By the
the
way,
kid who was
you ate your own
swallowing
poop
or
one
breathing
time.
poop.
There's something to tell your friends and your girlfriend.
Yeah. You want to embarrass your son?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the way to do it. Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, that's traumatic though, man. Like, you know, you certainly don't expect that when you're, you know, going through the delivery room.
Right.
Did they calm you down? Like, did they come over to you and say, hey, don't worry about it, this is natural, or this happens? And
No.
no one said anything.
No, there was just a ton of people surrounding him, and you know, at one point they looked over at me like, "Oh, hey, start talking to your son. Just, try to talk to him. I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm kind of in tears at this point.
Yeah.
I'm like, my wife's open up on the table. My son's in the corner. The alarm's going off. There's 30 more people
like
in the room.
Nightmare.
I don't know, the thoughts are going through my head. I came here thinking I was going to leave with a child. And now I'm wondering what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is my child going to be okay? Is my wife going to be okay?
Yeah.
Like, am I, what's going to happen? So it was pretty scary.
How long did this process last?
So we were probably in the operating room for, I mean, if
like
I had to
3
guess,
days.
I mean, if I had
Eternity.
to guess, probably, 20 minutes or so, but it felt like forever.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so then what happened is the baby ended up in the NICU for quite a while. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so they eventually, after the 3 days in the operating room, no, just kidding. After the, maybe 20 minutes in the operating room, they called me over to see him. Still there's 30 people surrounding him, and I had to kind of push away to actually see him. And then they said, okay, we're going to wheel him out of here and we're going to take him to the NICU and you can come with us. So I went with them to the NICU and I basically had him holding my finger. So they got him on a respirator. He started breathing and the machine was breathing for him.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And, it melts you.
Yeah.
This little person that you've never met before that, you're not sure if he's going to survive.
You help create
and
him.
Next thing you know, he's
you want him
holding
to
onto
be
your
strong
finger.
and you want him to be, it's like you picture this sort of perfect baby, and it's
Coming
like
out
all
lifting
these
weights.
potential all these potential problems. I mean, it's amazing because the people in the middle of the the bush in some foreign country or third world country will just drop the baby and just deliver it themselves and it's perfectly fine. We have sort of the best technology around and we still have you still have these sort of problems that'll happen and it happens all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said 10 days or so in the NICU or something like that. I mean, that's sort of what's going through your head at that point. Was there sort of progression at least that you felt like things were getting better, or was it just sort of traumatic the whole time?
So probably for the first couple days it was pretty traumatic and it was kind of like a dream. Yeah. Like it wasn't real. This is really my life. This is my son. This is, he's stuck here in the NICU and it was surreal for sure. But then eventually, talking with the doctors, they had a plan and they were getting things to him like nutrition so he would get better.
And eventually, now he's okay.
Now he's perfect.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's great.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.